From 11th to about 16th century, about 100 million Hindus were killed. We talk about 6 million Jews, the Jewish Holocaust. There are about 20,000 books on Jewish Holocaust. So then I realized there was such a Hindu Holocaust and there is not a single English book that anybody can read. So they used these women. In 1659, near Golconda, 20,000 little boys were sold as eunuchs. If you want to make one little boy eunuch with a crude operation, what ideology is this? I don't know.
Hard to stomach.
The invaders did not want a wealthy Hindu going on the street with his nose up in the air. So when Shivaji tasted that love, so that bond was created, which was magical, which had not happened in centuries. What created Shivaji was that bond he developed with the people.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you so much for making the time for this podcast. I really appreciate that you're here with us today.
Yeah, no. I'm also very happy because this is my first podcast in Bangalore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, in my own city.
Right.
Yes, I'm very happy.
So you have written about, 17th century a lot. You have books on Shivaji Maharaj, on Sambhaji Maharaj and the others as well. Yeah. Right. You're writing a book now on Queen Tarabai. And you have spoken a fair bit about each of these characters, as you call them, right?
Yeah.
So what I thought we'll do on this podcast specifically is talk about the 17th century India and contrast these two dominant forces, right? The Mughals and the Marathas. So Mughals, I think it starts with Akbar. He rules for about 5 or 10 years. I don't know exactly, but maybe about 5 years, and then it moves on to Jahangir.
No, he ruled for a longer period.
Within the 17th century, I think he's probably
not 17th, 16th century.
16th century, right. So it moves on to Jahangir and then, Shah Jahan and of course Aurangzeb as well. You could say somewhat the height of the Mughal Empire. And then you have the Marathas as well, right, with Shivaji Maharaj's coronation in 1674 and then Sambhaji, and then after that Ramraj and Queen Tarabai and so on. So these two dominant forces, I want to contrast the worldviews. How did they think about life in general? How did they think about policy, governance? What were their attitudes towards the different genders? What kind of jobs did people do?
Oh, long question.
So on and so forth. We'll of course structure this podcast into all these different things. But
I will tell you before that, I will tell you all this also. But before that, I'll tell you that before I started writing Challenging Destiny, which crossword bookstores asked me to write, they requested me to write.
Right.
Their publishing wing head, that time Anup Jerechani. So, and I was their first traditional author,
Okay.
And I was quite, because they have 100 and odd stores.
Right.
So, this Challenging Destiny is, I can proudly say, is the first book as a biography of Chhatrapati Shivaji in English,
right,
which could be read by anybody.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is it's like a reader-friendly book.
Yeah. No, that for sure.
Yeah,
I can attest to that.
Yeah. So, this book, I can proudly say, was the first of its kind. And now many people have started writing.
Right.
And, and then it has been translated in Marathi, Hindi, and now in Kannada, also available as audiobook.
Right.
And it's also available as a children's edition from 8 to 14 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is how it went. So to actually understand the Mughal Maratha, see, it is not about Shivaji. I call Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj as Shivaji in all my podcasts and people love it.
Right.
Because we grew up like that, calling him Shivaji. So then I have an advantage. Like I studied in Marathi medium and I read my books when I was growing up in Marathi. So most of those books which were given to me were about Shivaji. And I must inform you, one particular writer, he is now dead, who had a very great impact on me is Goni Dandekar.
Okay.
I must say that. And his books were like, they could capture anybody's mind, including children's mind.
Right.
So that way I learned. And then when I went to Dubai, then I forgot about Shivaji and my passion for Mughal Maratha history as I had it in childhood. I forgot about it. Because life takes so many twists and turns.
Right.
And you have so many responsibilities. Then children come along. Then you have financial responsibilities. When you work, when you say I'm a homemaker, a working woman has to be a professional as well as a homemaker.
Yeah.
There are two responsibilities. But when I went to Dubai and when I started writing for the Khaleej Times, I learned how to write in a simple manner, Keep it simple, stupid.
Right.
Writing. When you want to touch somebody's heart with your writing, don't show off with words, big words. This is my funda.
Right.
Of course, Mr. Shashi Tharoor may laugh at me, but what I feel,
Right.
Like, for example, if I say he did not have the wherewithals, I would rather say he did not have the means.
Right.
That way.
Yeah.
So then when I was writing those articles, and then because of my writing, I was not getting a job. Because of my writing, I could get my driving license with that little money I earned. Plus, I had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of readers in the Gulf. Because Khaleej Times was the official newspaper for Emirates Airlines.
Right.
And this way, I got a job. And then every time when you are an NRI, you always talk something bad about India, about indiscipline on the road, dust and dirt, the pollution, the noise. When I joined the bandwagon talking about India. But then I thought, if I cannot do anything for my country, what's the point? Then I thought I must do something. I did not have money to be a philanthropist or for charity. And I did not have time. But I had realized the power of my keyboard.
Right.
I won't say pen now. We don't hardly. Therefore, I started studying. I said, I must write a book which will inspire thousands of youngsters in India.
Right.
Okay. And it has done that job.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the way you write, there's a lot of passion to it, and you're a storyteller at heart.
Yeah,
so
I'm a storyteller.
Very, very easy to read it. Even the descriptions as well, whether it is describing the forts or the shields or the swords, or how the soldiers are structured, etc., etc. You go into such length about it. It feels like you're kind of painting that canvas for us. So
I will come back to your question now. So there was a Marathi analyst, Mr. Narhar Kurunkar. Right. He also died many years ago.
Okay.
I recently met his son and his daughter-in-law. What he said in one of the Marathi historical fictions, very famous historical fictions, he has written a foreword. About that foreword itself is like a book, 30-40 pages.
Wow.
What he has written, that if you want to understand Shivaji, you have to first understand Aurangzeb.
Interesting.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's very linear. What Shivaji was up against. So that is the core of my writing. Okay. I had to study the Mughal Empire. I had to. Where do I study Mughal Empire? Where do I get my papers about the Mughal Empire? There is no other author I would suggest other than Sir Yadunath Sarkar.
Yeah.
He spent 50 years of his life,
Right.
yeah, in studying Aurangzeb.
Right.
Yeah, and his volumes are free download.
Right.
Beautifully written. 5 books I downloaded and I started reading. Then I knew what was 17th century India was like. You see? So I will now answer your question.
Right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what happened? Just understand this specifics. Okay. Muhammad Ghazni came in 11th century, I think. And he defeated Jayapala.
Right.
Yeah? And the door of Hindustan
Was open.
flung open for the invaders from Central Asia. So may it be whatever loot they did, whatever, it's all there in history, which I don't want to elaborate now. But I'll tell you, after Muhammad Ghazni, Ghori. Then after him came Qutbuddin Aibak. Then Balban. And then, I don't know, Khilji's. There are many. Those times, when these invaders came, they used to have mercenaries with them. Maybe mercenaries in the form of cavalrymen, Guraswar.
Okay.
Yeah? So there may be 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, 100,000, 150,000. They used to come with big force.
Okay.
So what was the funda then? What was the funda? That, because if you want to understand how 17th century, what was the position, what was the condition, what were the conditions of 17th century India, you should understand this.
Right.
So when these mercenaries came, the waves after waves after waves, what they lead us, like the Ghaznis, the Ghoris, the Aibaks, the Balbans, the Khiljis, what they said to them, that you loot, you kill. This is what is allowed. Okay, you enslave people, you abduct women and children. We don't care. You will be rewarded, in fact, for that.
Right.
Only you keep 80% of the loot. Just give me 20%. The mercenaries were very happy. Right. It was an open, the wealth of India was open for them. So they also, many of the mercenaries became immensely rich. And to become, because they were getting benefited individually, they were more fierce. Okay. And over the years, over several years, several centuries, 5 to 6 centuries, about Farishta is a Muslim historian. According to him, he talks about larger figure. But if you take a moderate figure, in 5 to 6 centuries, from 11th to about 16th century, about 100 million Hindus were killed.
Wow.
See, we talk about 6 million Jews, Holocaust, the Jewish Holocaust. There are about 20,000 books on Jewish Holocaust. Okay. If you talk about American Civil War, there are about 60,000 books on American Civil War. If you talk about Napoleon Bonaparte, there are about 100,000 books in English. So then I realized there was such a Hindu Holocaust, and there were men who stood against the Islam. They raised their sword against the jihadist invaders. I won't even call them Islamist. I will call them jihadist invaders. And there is not a single English book that anybody can read. Yes. Sir Yadunath Sarkar's book was there, Life and Times of Shivaji. But that again is a history book for reference. And it is the byproduct of his knowledge when he was studying Aurangzeb. So many of the points I don't agree. Okay. So when these people came, now these 5 centuries, if you say 100 million Hindus were massacred, okay, women were abducted, in hundreds and thousands enslaved. So, women are the backbone of the society. There are two things the Islamic invaders thought. That, first of all, the Hindus must not reproduce. The reproduction system it has to go down. And the jihadist population must go up. So they used these women, sold them, enslaved them, kept them as sex slaves, sold their children, made the boys eunuchs. What you're talking about ideology. In 1 year, in 1659, with reference what I talk, which are given in my book, near Golconda, 20,000 little boys were sold as eunuchs. And if you want to make one little boy eunuch, with a crude operation, 5 die.
Sheesh.
What ideology is this? I don't know.
It's hard to stomach.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you imagine? So this is all. This was, and these eunuch slaves were used to protect the harems which swell, the mercenaries' harems. To protect the mercenary, because the eunuchs, and these eunuch boys also were used as sex slaves. Some of the mansabdars, very big mansabdars of Akbar, they had 15,000 to 20,000 eunuch slaves in their harems.
Wow.
I don't know what ideology is this.
Right. Yeah.
You see?
So you mentioned...
So I'll tell you another thing. When I say 100 million Hindus were massacred, which 100,000 will these be? Okay? They're not the poor slogging somewhere at the edge of the forest in some farmlands. No. I mean, those who were killed were intellectuals. Those wealthy, enterprising Hindus. So, how much loss we have suffered?
Absolutely.
Brain drain, along with body drain.
Right.
And I'm not looking down on farmers.
Right.
They suffered a lot,
Right.
But intellectual Hindus, enterprising Hindus, so it was like a moral destruction.
Right.
If you read Will Durant's books on civilization of Orient, Oriental something, he writes in beautiful English. So he talks about the Khiljis and their philosophies, and he says that all these people, the invaders, did not want a wealthy Hindu, going on the street with his nose up in the air. No, they should look down. Their eyes must search the earth, and they must walk. They must not have any money, and they must be like, they must develop a slave mentality. So these 5 to 6 centuries went in development of slave mentality of Hindus. They were scared. Of course, I blame the Hindu kings also. We did not have, we were divided. We were jealous of each other. And we were sometimes happy that, an Islamist army has come and swallowed the nearby kingdom. You see? Patriotism was dead.
Right.
And those days, Hindu kings were also become the victim of luxurious lives. And their war tactics were very old. Like they went on elephants, grand processions, you see, to show their parades, military parades. But these mercenaries who came from Central Asia, they came on very agile horses with iron stirrups, very modern.
Right.
And they were going to get 80% of the wealth. So they were fired.
Right. Yeah, it's a very potent mix of mercenary fervor and sort of an ideological sanction.
Ideological sanction. This
Right.
is the right word you used, Roshan.
Yeah.
Ideological sanction.
Yeah. So it's a very potent mix of that.
So somebody enslaves a woman or 100 women or 1,000 women or 10,000 women. It's a thing of pride. It's done. You are serving your ideology. You are actually doing good for the ideology. You are going to get, when you die, you will get benefits from what you're doing now. That was the worst part.
Right.
So you understand, when we reach the 17th century, by the time we reach 17th century, what was the mentality of Hindus, majority was?
Right. Yeah.
They were scared.
Very difficult times. Is it fair to say that around this time, I mean, since you mentioned that Hindu kings were sort of divided and so on.
That's gone. After the Mughal Empire started, Hindu kingdoms were almost gone.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Even before that, 200-300 years before that, when the dynasties started, in Delhi, Hindu kingdoms were gone. Only the kingdoms which remained alive were in Rajasthan. Somehow they fought. And there was two large kingdoms, Marwar and Mewar.
Right.
Marwar was controlled by the Rathods and Mewar was controlled by the Sisodiyas, the Ranas. They never joined the Mughals.
Right.
Mewar, Sisodiyas.
What about the south?
No, so we'll come to that. Yeah?
Okay. So in that sense, the Marathas initiated the first concept of nationhood in that sense? I mean...
no, not now. So what happened till the 13th, 14th century, only the north burnt.
Okay.
Now, the book which I consider as a Bhagavad Gita of Shivaji and his times is Sri Gajanan Mehendale's Shivaji and His Life and Times. There is no other book. They have 3 volumes in Marathi. It's a magnum opus.
Okay.
It's like 1,500 pages, 3 Marathi books, which is consolidated. And this person has himself written in Marathi and in English.
Right.
No translator. So in English, his book, the bibliography itself at the end is 200 pages. Whenever you choose a historian, Roshan, even if I'm a historical fiction writer, it's my passion. But when I say historical fiction, it has to be based on true events.
Right.
Okay. So many people say, oh, how can we take a word of a microbiologist? But historian can be anybody.
Right.
I mean, to study history. Because you don't have to do experiments. You are not going to get technically trained. All you have to do is read. Yeah?
Right.
So, this time, I mean, Gajanan Mehendale's book, whenever you choose a author to use as a reference book, that person's, their book, his, her, whatever. So now if I want to choose Mughal Maratha history, reference books, I must know that the author knew Persian and Modi script of Marathi.
Right.
Modi is like in English we write the running English, you see? Cursor. Yeah, cursor writing. Cursor. Right. What you say?
Cursive.
Cursive writing.
Yeah.
Like that we have Marathi cursive writing, which is Modi script, quite difficult to read. I cannot read it.
Right.
Now we were taught Balbodh script, Marathi.
Okay.
So first you have to find out, like Sir Yadunath Sarkar was expert in Farsi language. Correspondence, how will you read that correspondence to be an historian? Sri Gajanan Mehendale studied Persian and Modi script.
Right.
So I said my gold standard is for Mughal history, Sir Yadunath Sarkar, and for Shivaraj's history, Sri Gajanan Mehendale.
Right.
So they will like my Bhagavad Gita and Geet Ramayana or whatever, call it, Mahabharata.
Right.
So then, so these two books, and then I started realizing that by the time, but now see how changes happened. The Hindus had a slave mentality.
Right.
Okay, the Khilji, the southern kingdoms were safe. Still, they were reveling in the wealth. For example, Yadavas were standing between the north and the south. Yadava kingdom, Daulatabad fort, which is first known as Devagiri. What Sri Gajanan Mehendale's book says, that they should have learnt from what is happening in the north. But they didn't. When Alauddin Khilji came to the south in 12th or 13th century, within a month he conquered Daulatabad, Devagiri fort. Because Yadavas were very busy in their yajnas and pujas and their, superstitions and whatever.
Right.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think some 20,000 kilos of pearl, some 10,000 carts of silk, the loot, Khilji's loot I'm talking about.
Right.
So after Khilji, the invaders were, the gates of the Deccan were open for the invaders.
So in these circumstances, how was the Maratha Empire born?
Maratha Empire was not there at all till then. Till then, there was no Maratha. Then what happened later on? In the south, so many other invaders came, and I don't want to go into that deep history. And finally, there were 5 sultanates. Yeah?
Right.
There was this Adil Shahi, Qutub Shahi, Nizam Shahi of Ahmednagar, Nizam Shahi mainly in Maharashtra, Adil Shahi mainly in Karnataka, with Bijapur as a capital, Qutub Shahi mainly in Hyderabad area, Andhra, as Hyderabad its capital, and Golconda at its fort, which will protect Hyderabad. And then there were Bidar dynasty, and there was one more dynasty. So all these 5 dynasties came together and fought against the Vijayanagar Empire. It was later, 30 or 40 years after the death of Krishnadevaraya, or even more. So they fought and they defeated Vijayanagar Empire.
Right.
So jihadist brotherhood kicked in,
This was the Battle of Talikota, I think.
Talikota,
Right.
Battle of Talikota.
Okay.
So then, even then, finally only 3 sultanates remained. Adil Shahi, Qutub Shahi and Nizam Shahi. And the Mughal Empire. And remnants of Vijayanagara Empire. Okay. So what did the very brave Hindu Sardars did? I wouldn't even call them Maratha. Hindu Sardars. They became mercenary barons of the sultanates or the empire. They took pride in that.
Okay.
Yeah. And they hated if they even competed with each other. Who will do better for the sultanate, or who will do better for the empire? And even in Rajasthan, most of the Akbar's time itself, most of the kingdoms other than Mewar started serving the Mughal Empire.
Why do you think that was the case? I mean, did they not realize the larger significance of the conquest, or there was no
No,
unifying
they didn't
force?
realize, I think.
Okay.
Why would they join otherwise? Because each of the Rajput king
Right.
had a capacity to be 10 times more powerful than the Mughal Empire. Emperor, Badshah. Why they didn't do it? History doesn't tell us that.
Certainly fascinating.
So, so they joined
Right.
the empire.
So what was the objective of the Marathas,
So, now, Shivraj's father also, Shahaji Raje, he worked as a Sardar, as an independent regent, I'll call him. He first worked for Nizam Shahi. See, and now I'll tell you a little bit about how their military and civil administration worked. Otherwise, nobody will understand what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, in Akbar's time, he started a system mainly he improved the system of Mansabdari. Mansab means a rank. A Mansabdar is a rank holder. You can be a civil Mansabdar or a military Mansabdar. If you are a civil Mansabdar, you get paid in cash, dat, or Sawar. Some Sawar means Gudaswar, means cavalry. Some cavalry is given to civil Mansabdars also. But the military Mansabdars are given large pieces of land. Okay, so you take this land. And now what they have to do with this land? What was the only industry those days is
farming. Agriculture.
So from that land, and of course they had all very fertile land. Ganges, Yamuna flew from, Yamuna was in their empire. Ganga was in their empire. So, and Bihar, Bengal and Punjab, very fertile regions.
Yeah.
So they had all that. So they will give these large pieces of land to the military Mansabdars and tell them to collect the money from the Watandars of the place. Watandars, who are the Watandars? Are sons of the soil. So if they are in Bengal, they will be Bengalis. If they are in Maharashtra, they will be Maharashtrians.
So this is the equivalent of a district magistrate or something
No,
like that?
it's like, for example...
A collector, sorry.
Something like that, revenue.
Yeah.
So you, in Maharashtra... See, I come from a Watandar family, Deshmukh. So there are Patils who looked after the villages, Deshmukhs who looked after a group of villages. Okay, so what they'll do, they will judge what this land is fertile. It will have so much revenue. This time's rain was good, so revenue, the produce must have increased. So I must get that much revenue. So Watandar is the first station where the money was collected from the agriculture. Produce. From the agriculturists or farmers. Or they also called Rayot or Rayat.
Okay.
So, Watandars collected the money. Okay. Watandars collected the money and they gave it to the Mansabdar. Mansabdar collected from, say, he may have 100 or 200 or 300 or 400 Watandars under him.
Right.
Watandars were called many words. I am talking about this Marathi word which I know, which I have explained in my book. When they got the money, they kept the cavalry. So, if I was given, say, about 2,000 villages, then I should at least minimum to minimum keep 5,000 horses and horsemen. And the money, the salary of those horsemen will be given from what I collect from the Watandars of the area.
Right.
So this, and how many military Mansabdars, this is all documented. This is not from my imagination. I do not put my 2-bit into it.
Right.
Who am I? Very small person, So how many mansabdars were there, you think? Military mansabdars under the reign of Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, that time. How many you think military mansabdars the Mughal Empire had? They had 22 provinces. All northern provinces were theirs. So, how many do you think? There were about 8,000 military mansabdars.
Each with these many villages?
No, some just had 1,000 horses, some had 2,000, some had 3,000, right. Some had 4,000, some had only 200. Some were civil from that. Very small portion of them were civil. Then they had only about 10 horses. Like that, when the power went from Shah Jahan to Aurangzeb, Aurangzeb had 200,000 well-equipped heavy cavalry. And Mughals had this kind of a parade, They used to have this parade, military parade, going through Agra, going through Delhi, and it used to be exquisite. Thousands of horses, followed by hundreds of elephants, followed by hundreds of footmen, followed by artillery, the cannon mounted on horses, camels and elephants. Why was this procession? To impress and subdue whoever, if no Hindu should think of, or no other, even jihadis must think of becoming bigger than the Mughals.
Right. Ma'am, you were talking about the Mansabdari system under the Mughals. I'm curious if this was the case even with the Sultanates as well, right? The 5 Sultanates that you described. How were they structured?
So this Deccan Sultanates, now only 3 remained, Adil Shahi, Qutub Shahi, Nizam Shahi. There was Jagirdari system. Okay. Similarly, like you give the land to a Jagirdar and he collects the money, his share from the Watandars. You see? So Watandars is the first station who collects the money from the farmers, then Watandar gives it to the Jagirdar and Jagirdar keeps cavalry. Similarly, but they were known as Jagirdars.
Right.
The Mughals, they were known as Mansabdars. Mansabdars were transferable. In the south, they were not transferable. Mansabdars in the north, the Mughal, the Mansabdari was not hereditary. But in the Sultanates, it somehow became hereditary. That is how Shivaji inherited his father's Jagir, which was given by Nizam to Shahaji Raje. But later on, Nizam Shahi was annexed. Half went to the Mughals during Shah Jahan's time and half went to Adil Shahi. So, Shahaji Raje's Jagir was then a part of Adil Shahi. Shahaji Raje tried to save Nizam Shahi, but he needed to surrender to the Adil Shahi king on a fort near Mumbai, Mahuli, fort of Mahuli.
Okay.
Yeah. So when he surrendered, Adil Shahi allowed him to keep his Jagir and transfer him to Bangalore. And that was actually a message from Shah Jahan that when Shahaji Raje is without the mountainous region, he is like a eagle without its talon.
Okay. Right.
So, but that time, they also attacked Pune, Adil Shahi warriors. Some were, of course, Hindu Sardars. They attacked Shahaji Raje's Jagir. They destroyed houses, barns, farms. They burned the farms. And there was a person called Murar Baji, some name, Hindu Sardar of Adil Shahi. he tilled the land with donkeys. So, and making the land, according to the superstition, inauspicious. So, if anybody tills that land, bad luck will fall on them.
Right.
So, the land remained not tilled for several years, and thorny bushes grew all across the farmlands in Shahaji Raje's Jagir. This was the conditions of Shahaji Raje's Jagir when little Shivraj and his mother came to from Shivaneri fort. They went to Bangalore, and then where Shahaji Raje was staying, and then they came to Pune. This was the condition of their Jagir. Thorny bushes grown all over the place. Farmers had run away into the forest, and there was a famine, and people, it's written in the books that dead people's bone powder was sold as wheat.
Oh.
The famine was raging when Shivaji arrived in his Jagir for the first time as a little boy, 7 or 8.
Right.
Now the story is how the seed of Swaraj. See, he was 7 when he came, and he started thinking of Swaraj when he was barely in his teens. So what happened in these 3-4 years? That's the magical moment in the life of Shivaji, and in the history of Maharashtra, and in the history of India. Those 3-4 years is the magical moment.
What were the equation between the Mughals and the Sultanates? I mean, were they subordinates of theirs? Or?
So, like Kissinger said, it's not nobody is a friend of enemy. It's about the interest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Shah Jahan had attacked Adil Shahi when they refused to catch Shahaji Raje and refused to attack Nizam Shahi. They destroyed Adil Shahi. They attacked from 3 forces. Then Adil Shahi had to join hands with the Mughals. A lot of history in the middle. It's not about ideology, Roshan. It's not about religion. Also, it is not about, straightforwardness or treachery. It's all about the power. And how to remain in the power. Don't you see it today?
So how was Swaraj conceived, and what did it
so what
mean?
happened when he was with his mother? Now these 3-4 years were very crucial, you see. Famine was there, and then what happened? They had a administrator of the Jagir, which was appointed by Shahaji Raje, Dadoji Kondev. He took Shivaji along because they needed farmers to clean the land. I have done farming, Roshan, and when your farmland is covered with thorny bushes, you need those excavation machines, JCB machines, and it's very difficult to uproot those thorny bushes. Babul trees, they are called.
Right.
And even if you keep one thorn there, one tree will come up next day.
Okay.
With little water. They don't even need water. So I don't know how. So they needed farm hands. So these people, Shivaji and his administrator, they went to the jungles. They went to the forest and requested farmers to come back. And their children, they were very scared, because from the north, the Mughal raiders will come. From the east, Adil Shahi raiders will come. They will take away their wives, their children. They will loot them, burn their farm. You see, agriculture you need to have protection for at least a year. When you sow the land, it takes 1 year to see the produce. Then so much time they must be protected. They were never protected. So, this Shivaji and his administrator had to actually literally tell them that please come, we will protect you. We will teach you sword fighting. Come. We will empower you. So the seed of empowering the farmers. So otherwise they wouldn't come back. And Shivrai's mother had some money. And I feel Shahaji Raje also sent her money, though it's not written in the books. Because it was all going underground work, you see. It should not come in the eyes of the sultanates that they are doing this work. And Sultanate was not bothered. Usually they kept the subedars. Okay.
Right.
But unless the land was fertile,
Right.
who wants a subedar? Who wants to watch a land which is covered with thorny bushes? Because there is no produce, there is no revenue. Let it go. But these farmers, they came back, and Jizau Sahib, Shivrai's mother, treated them with kindness. They started cleaning the farmlands. There was a measurement of the land. Each farmer was given a land on his or her name. And, the farm, within 2-3 years, the farmland started, like magic, started producing grains, sorghum, and other millets. Right. So what happens, when the farmers produce, they also want the tools. So blacksmiths get the job. See how it's like the entire
the economy
is like shaken.
Right.
It springs.
It's stimulated.
Yeah, stimulated.
Right.
Then when the blacksmiths come, then they need the barbers. Then the barbers get the job. Then they need a goldsmith. Then people want to buy gold. Then goldsmiths come, and then there are these things will die. The animals die, so their skins must be removed. So the leather operators come. So the entire economy kick-started in Pune. And when Shivrai was 13-14 years old, that took 7 years, 6 to 7 years for economy to kickstart. And the administrator and Shivrai saw to it that the farmers get training in sword fighting. And there was a drill for farmers. So they could at least protect themselves and their families. Still now the Swaraj thing was not in his head. Okay, till then. But he knew if the people are empowered, they can defend themselves. That much they knew. How many 200, 300 farmers he must have trained to start with.
Right.
That time, Shah Jahan was the Mughal emperor, and he had 200,000 cavalrymen, 40,000 artillerymen, and 250,000 footmen.
Wow.
Huh? So what I'm saying is, it's like David and Goliath. It's something like... So you have to know the Mughal empire, how it was, how big it was.
Right.
And even the sultanates had, if not that many numbers as the Mughal empire, but they had about 50,000 to 1 lakh cavalrymen, Adil Shahi. And same 50,000 to 1 lakh cavalrymen in Qutub Shahi.
Right.
So what Shivrai learnt, I feel, that time, when he was 13, 14, that people can be empowered and they get confident and we can make money from the thorny bush covered land. Doesn't matter. We can remove it and make. Then what he realized that the forts around in his Jagir, see, the king or the sultan gives land as a Jagir to a Jagirdar to keep cavalry. But the forts in that Jagir do not belong to the Jagirdar. They are king's forts. So there was Netoji Palkar. Shivrai used to call him Kakaji. There are a lot of people Shahaji Raje sent to help Shivrai. So Netoji Palkar was one of them. He actually trained Shivrai in sword fighting. And in that small area, Shivrai had a lot of friends. And he did not look at, his mother also did not look at the caste or anything. So he had some 10-15 friends. So those friends also got training from Netoji Palkar. Horse riding, how to throw a spear from a running horse,
Right.
and hit the target. You are also moving, target also may be moving. It's difficult. So all that training he was getting at that time. What he realized at that time, then he was getting trained in battle tactics also. Because he was supposed to serve Adil Shahi kingdom.
Right.
Right? As a Jagirdar son, he has to become a regent of Adil Shahi. Khushi job.
Right.
But what he realized that the hill forts in his Jagir belonged to Adil Shahi kingdom. But the king, the Sultan in Bijapur neglected these forts. Because forts are like that. 10 people on the fort can fight 1,000 people on the ground.
It's a vantage point.
Yeah, advantage point.
Right.
So at 14, 15, Shivraya's mind started, if I acquire those forts. Because now he doesn't have a father there. He doesn't have a subedar to watch over him. He has tasted freedom. Even father is not there to order him. And at any cost, he does not want to let that freedom go. And he has seen the love of the farmers through their eyes for him. He was perhaps the only Jagirdar son who got so connected with the farmers. And at the age of 15, see, even these Watandars, like Deshmukhs, like my family and my ancestors, what they did, they sometimes collected, say, 2,000 rupees as a revenue from a village. They would only pass on 200 to 300 rupees to the Jagirdar. They will keep the rest. And what will they do with the money? They will build fortresses and keep sentinels. And they had become immensely powerful, Watandars. Shivraya has been growing in that. He knows. He has seen it. So when they become so powerful, the Watandars, they could, they could fight with the Jagirdars also. And they will jump. Like the MLAs from this party to that party.
Right.
So Watandars needed to be controlled. First. And how do you control Watandars? Because revenue system is in their hands and they are sons of the soil. And it's a hereditary title. So generations and generations of Watandars are there in that. That village or a group of village. And people have this deep-rooted respect for that family. For generations again. So how do you fight with them? That he realized. He realized the flaws of the Watandari system. See, you have to realize the flaws of the systems you are surrounded with to make any progress or to get a new idea. Am I right?
Right.
So he realized the Watandari system is of no good. He realized that from childhood. And he wanted to take over the forts. And how he takes over those forts without bloodshed is there in my book.
Right. Right.
So he takes over those 5-6 forts. Once he takes over those forts, he has now little money generated from the revenue system. He puts that into repairing those forts. And his father also sent him money, I feel, from under the table. From far away from the eyes of Adil Shahi king. Because father was a regent of Adil Shahi. He was rich man.
Right.
And how they developed love for Shivraya is that the Watandars were so arrogant that they also, Hindu Watandars I am talking about, they also thought the women and children of the farmers under them is their property. So they can do anything with those. So one of the Patil from Ranze, a small village called Ranze, misbehaved with a woman and she committed suicide. Is there, fully documented. When Shivaraya was 50, and everybody used to go scot-free. They were like, I don't know what I should call them, gundas. and unbridled power, I would call it. So this Ranze Patil was called this Shivaji when he was just 13, 14, 15, I think. He sent his people to catch the Patil. And he was brought to the court in front of the administrator, Dadaji Kondev, and his mother. In front of them, he, for the first time in centuries, he declared that the limbs of that Patil should be cut, severed, slayed.
Wow.
After that incident, after the Patil lived, and after that Shivaji looked after that Patil also, without limbs, without hands and legs, or one hand and one leg. But people's love for him grew, So they started looking with so much respect that now there is somebody whom because they could never see their king. King is somewhere else. In Bijapur. Where will these poor mountainous farmers will go? To Bijapur. They don't even know where that is. For them, their Jagirdar was their king. Their Watandar first, the king. But if Watandar tortured them, there was this Jagirdar's son who is looking after them. So when Shivaji tasted that love, see, when you, the biggest opium of survival and helping others is love. When people love you, you have to look after them. There's no other way. So that bond was created, which was magical, which had not happened in centuries. So that magical bond Shivaji did not want to let go. Then he had ideas, how do I protect my people? How do I give them good life? Okay. So then he realized, then he took over the forts and people were ready to, those people who never left their homes, never crossed the boundaries of their villages and farmlands, were ready to follow him to eternity, even to the death. To death. So wasn't that magical?
Yeah, amazing.
It was magical because even after he was dead, 27 years, his people fought and never let Aurangzeb succeed and take over the Deccan. So this is something which has not happened in history as yet. So his love for the people and people's love for him was the bond, which was more than any weapons, more than the number of cavalrymen, more than the mountainous region, more than the hill forts. What created Shivaji was that bond he developed with the people.
Right.
And his wish, heart wish I call them, to keep his people happy. Like you must be thinking, my parents must be happy. They must be comfortable. But he felt that way for his entire population of that mountainous region.
Right.
So I feel that is, when I was reading, when you read history books, they're dry. And their correspondence, dry correspondence. Then actually one kind of message comes from between the lines.
Right.
To the author. So what message I got? It's not written in history book. That love for his people and his wish to empower people and his people's wish to die for him and back him. See, people are not fools. People are not fools. They know that this person loves me and he loves my family and he is ready to do anything for my family. So I should also be ready to do anything for this person. And he was their Jagirdar's son. And it was the first time in the history, they had a leader. After centuries, they had a leader who they can call, whom they can consider as their own. So
Wonderful. This
is what the seed of that idea.
Right. Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not tangible.
Yeah.
The
I
seed.
can quite imagine, because the system was so extractive, and you have faced centuries of oppression. There is just such a I would say there is no hope at all. And in this kind of a situation, there is
Yeah.
someone who is representing the will of the people
Yes.
and
Empowering them.
and then starts to form a cohesive sort of a force
Yes.
to show them a new way, right? Yeah.
So what he inherited, Shivraj, a thorny land covered with thorny bush, town destroyed by the Adil Shahi Sardars, and farmers who had run away into the forest, and their wilted minds. That's what he had inherited. What Aurangzeb had inherited? He had inherited 500,000 worth of army strength. And do you know how much money, when Aurangzeb took the power from Shah Jahan, how much money his mansabdars collected from the farmers in 22 provinces? Can you give me a figure?
I know I'm going to be very, very off.
So, see, there is, on the paper it was 22 crores.
Wow.
Rupees. 22 crore rupees. Rupee ऐसा नहीं था नोट वाला or some. Each rupee was 10 gram of silver.
Wow.
But hasil, according to Mr. Shri Mahendale, Gajanan Mahendare's book, hasil means हाथ में आया हुआ. How much hasil was there? 12 to 15 crores worth rupees. So what I did in Challenging Destiny, I converted, each 12 to 15 crores rupees, I took 13 to 14 crores, the medium. I converted that into entire silver. See, each coin, 12 crores or 13 crores of coins, 10 gram each, pure silver. I converted into so many kgs of silver. Okay.
Right.
So that many kgs of silver could, those days, buy 90,000 to 100,000 kilos of gold.
Wow.
That gold today cost $3 to $4 billion.
Humongous number. Right.
I'm just showing you the Goliath.
Right. Right.
If you don't know the power of Goliath, you don't know Shivaji.
Yeah.
See, if you have a rich neighbor and he bothers you partying in the night, you still hesitate to go to the police. What if? So that's how you realize the importance of Shivaji.
Right.
And now what is our budget for our army this time? 75 to $80 billion. It was 25, I don't know.
It's about 4%, I think. I'm not very sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm telling you, 75 to $80 billion. And we have about 30 lakh army personnel, 15 lakh can go to frontiers, 15 lakh are back office, and there are some reserves. I don't know that number. But imagine those days, the Mughal had 500,000 force in their military, artillery, cavalry and infantry.
Right.
And Shivaji could collect, see, he had 1,000 villages in his Jagir, Shivaji. He could hardly collect 300 rupees per village once it started generating revenue. So he had no money. What he wanted now, what Shivaji wanted, that to, first of all, right now subduing Watandars was too early a decision. But he wanted other Jagirdars to join him and form a Hindu lobby, a Maratha lobby, and attack Adil Shahi or face Adil Shahi or subdue Adil Shahi's power.
How did he get that union together? Because what
He
we discussed...
He didn't get.
Right.
Who will join him? Only farmers, carpenters, goldsmiths, perhaps not goldsmiths also, blacksmiths, barbers.
So the other Jagirdars, Watandas...
Why would they leave their cushy jobs and come to this upstart young person and kneel down in front of him and leave their positions. Why? Would you and me do that? Suppose you have a job in Johnson & Johnson, even if you slog like a slave there,
Right.
if your friend starts a small enterprise with 50,000 rupees in a garage, will you join him? Now, I mean, I'm just saying I'm not blaming anybody not joining him. But the rich and the powerful Hindu Sardars did not join. They hesitated. There are 3 or 4 who joined him, which were his father's friends again.
Okay.
Joined him. But most of them, there were Mores, Sardar Mores in the valley of Javli. It was 1956.
Right.
They used to actually send their gundas in Shivrai's territory to collect revenue once the revenue started generating. And Shivrai was very clever. He could not go to the north to expand if he wanted to start his own nation. Because north was Mughals. He could not go to the east. East was Adil Shahi. Where will he expand? He had no money. He had no soldiers. Where would he expand? What is the easiest way to expand? Is Konkan. See, his Jagir was landlocked. There was no samudra there. No ocean. But see, again, Konkan is a very rough terrain with mountains and rivers, and they're joining the cliffs. And there was no Gadkari then, no highways. Pune Mumbai highway was not existing then. I think so. It was not existing.
Right.
So there was only 1 or 2 ways you could enter Konkan.
Right.
One was via Gujarat, that side, but it was too far. So the fastest way was Valley of Javli, where More was sitting there as a Raja. And
Right.
he was become a pakka, like, one kind of a tyrant. And most of the goods which would come from Surat to the Konkan ports, for them to, even salt, to reach Bijapur, they had to go through the valley of Javli. And Mores used to collect heavy taxes. They had become immensely rich and arrogant. So Shivrai sent them letters, you join me against Adil Shahi. So they said, if you come to Javli, you will not go back alive. And Shivrai attacked them. He sent, that's a beautiful story. You should read Frontiers.
Right.
How his Vakil goes there. Vakil has immunity,
Right.
Diplomatic immunity. The Vakil kills Mores.
Right.
One More runs away. So everybody blames Shivarai for killing Mores and taking over Javli, Valley of Javli. But they do not know in 1656, in the month of February, when Shivarai attacked, he was also expanding his kingdoms, right? And Mores were very arrogant. They were bothering him. So he allowed all the Mores women to go away, scot-free. Only More brothers were killed, one ran away, and they took over Javli. They did not attack any civilians there. In fact, More's army chief, captain they called, Murar Baji, joined Shivrai in that battle. And people, when I was trying to write the book, people, even in Maharashtra, they started cursing Shivrai, saying that how can he massacred the More family. He didn't. He only killed the men. Okay, who were trying to fight with his Vakil. And of course, and the troopers. And then Shivrai also went that night in the valley. You don't know that valley of Javli. Have you seen Pratapgarh Fort?
No, but I've heard of it, yeah.
It's that entire area is Valley of Javli.
Right.
Where the mountains are more monstrous than anywhere, and the valleys are more dangerous than anywhere else.
Right.
Okay. And Koyana river flows through that, and so many other rivers. So now see, so when these people said to me, how can Shivaji do this and massacre More family? I mean, More men. I always tell them my frontier starts with, in the month of, just see the coincidence, in the month of February, in 1956, Aurangzeb and his troops, he wanted to gather a lot of money because war of succession was coming. His father was getting ill.
1656. Yeah.
1656. He attacked Hyderabad and his people, they killed 17,000 Qutub Shahi soldiers. Not only that, they abducted all the women. 20,000 women were abducted from Hyderabad. And they burnt all the houses. They looted the town for several days and nights. They even took the teak doors by hammering on the hinges.
Wow.
But for some historians, Mughal, that was their war of expansion. They are ready to do that. What Shivaji did is a dacoity, which I don't agree.
Right. Right. I think we've done a fabulous job of sort of talking about the origins, the ideology and the motivations of these two dominant forces in the 17th century. There's many more questions that I have, including, what were some of those famous battles? How did the Marathas expand? How did they govern and so on and so forth? But I think we will have to do multiple follow-up podcasts for that. But this was excellent. I mean, so we got a sense of what the times were like. And also the rise of Shivaji Maharaj.
The idea, which actually I had not discussed in any podcast. The idea how it was generated. Yours was a very good question. How that, even it is very magical, those.
Right.
From his 7 years to his 13, 14 years, that time was magical for him, for Maharashtra, and for India.
Right.
That is what I feel.
Wonderful. So on that note, we'll end the podcast here, this segment, and hopefully we'll do a follow-up soon as well.
We'll do that.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Welcome.